Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Midnight Archives. I'm Corbin. Today's story comes from a listener in Scandinavia. I'll be telling it from their perspective. You know, people think the North is all about beautiful summers and northern lights, but those of us who grew up in the deep forests, we know different. We know about the things that watch from between the trees, the things that were here long before our roads and our houses. This happened to my grandfather, and he was never the same after. It was the late 1950s, up in the northern wilderness. He was a lumberjack, a practical man, not given to fantasies. He was driving his old truck home from a remote logging camp along a forest track. It was deep winter and the sun had set around 2 in the afternoon. By 4 p.m., it was completely dark. Now, this road cut through a particularly old and dense part of the woods. The locals, they had a name for that area. They called it the Borderland. It was one of those places that felt in between. The air was always stiller there, the silence deeper. My grandfather was about halfway home when his headlights picked up something standing by the side of the road. At first, he thought it was just a strangely shaped tree stump covered in snow. But as he got closer, he saw it was a woman. She was tall and very thin, dressed in all gray like the color of the winter twilight. And she was just standing there, perfectly still, facing the road. He slowed down, of course. It was strange to see anyone out here alone, on foot. As he passed her, he got a clear look at her face. It was pale, and her eyes were closed. But the strangest thing was what lay at her feet. There was a small, neat pile of stones, like a little cairn, and next to it, a single silver coin, just sitting on the packed snow. A cold dread washed over him. He knew the old stories. He knew what this was. This was a warden spirit. The old folks said that sometimes the protective spirits of certain ancient places could take a human form, usually a female one. They were guardians of a specific place. Seeing one was a sign, a warning. You were somewhere you weren't supposed to be, or you were being given a chance to show respect. My grandfather didn't stop. He knew better. To stop and speak to it could mean being led astray, forever lost in the woods, or worse. He pressed the accelerator, his heart hammering in his chest. He forced himself not to look in the rearview mirror. The old tales said if you see it following you, you'll never make it home. He drove for another 10 minutes, the beam of his headlights feeling terribly small and weak in that immense darkness. And then he saw her again. The same tall, gray woman, standing on the side of the road ahead in the exact same posture, the same pile of stones, the same silver coin. His blood ran cold. This was impossible. He hadn't passed any turnoffs. He was on a straight stretch. There was no way she could have gotten ahead of him, yet there she was. He drove past her again, this time faster, and again he saw her pale, closed-eyed face. He kept driving, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The forest seemed to press in closer. 15 minutes later, he saw her for the third time. This time, she was standing right in the middle of the road. My grandfather slammed on the brakes. The truck skidded on the icy track, sliding sideways before coming to a stop. He sat there, trembling, staring at the figure. She hadn't moved. She was just waiting. He knew what he had to do. It was the old way. He rolled down his window, the freezing air biting his face. He fumbled in his pocket and found a coin. It wasn't silver, just a regular coin. He threw it out the window onto the road in front of his truck. An offering. A toll for passing through her land. He held his breath. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, without a sound, the gray woman was simply gone. Not vanished in a puff of smoke, but 1 second she was there, and the next, she wasn't. He waited a full minute before driving forward, slowly, over the coin he had thrown. He drove the rest of the way home without seeing her again. When he finally reached his cottage, he was as white as a sheet. He never spoke about it much, but the next day, he insisted on taking the long way around, adding an hour to his journey to avoid that stretch of road. And he always carried a silver coin in his pocket when he drove after that. He said, "The forest doesn't hate us, but it has its own rules, its own guardians, and sometimes on the old roads, you have to pay a toll. Not with money, but with respect. You have to acknowledge that you are just a visitor passing through." And that was the story from our listener. A reminder that some paths are older than we know, and they have their own guardians. If you have a story you'd like to share, please send it to us. Until next time, sleep well. If you can.